Hey mamas, I am so excited because I'm joined with my friend Genia Enders. She's a conscious coach and founder of Journey with G. Gina guides moms back to themselves, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Helping them reconnect with their inner guidance, emotional balance, and a sense of self so they can show up more intentionally in their lives and in their parenting. She specializes in human connection, relationship dynamics, and behavioral patterns. Gina supports moms in creating meaningful, lasting change that goes far beyond surface level parenting strategies. Okay, so you're going to want to listen to this, mama, especially during this time of raising that teenage daughter, right? Her work helps families move out of stress and reactivity and into greater calm, awareness, and connection. Don't we want that all? And at the heart of her work is the Mindful Motherhood Program, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. It's a transformative experience that's earned the name, the Connection Coach. Through this program, Gina guides mothers from overwhelm and nervous system dysregulation into balance and emotional steadiness, empowering them to lead their families from a grounded, conscious place. And she's right there with you in the trenches during this time. Gina is a mom of a 15-year-old daughter, so she's also raising a teenage daughter herself, and a 12-year-old son. Prior to launching Journey with G, she co-founded a multi-million-dollar business and was named one of the next top business leaders, 40 under 40. I can't wait for you to meet my dear friend, Gina. Let's dive in. If you are frustrated with how to get your teenage daughter to open up to you because all you want is to connect with her as you once did, you're in the right place. Hey, I'm Jeannie Baldomero, a former rebellious teen, now mom of 3 young adults, educator, and the mom mentor, equipping you to create open communication with your girl so she can come to you about anything, even if she's scared. So grab your oat milk latte, breathe, and let's do this together. Hey mama, this is my invitation to you. Join me in the Talk to Your Teen Girl framework. It's a 6-week course that will get you started in creating a space for your teen to feel safe and respond in a way where your teen girl will feel heard and understood. You are building trust so you can get what you want most from your daughter, and that is to come to you about anything, even if she's scared. So head on now to talktoyourteengirl.com. That's talktoyourteengirl.com. Okay, mamas, like I said, I have my dear friend, okay? I say friend because we've known each other before we even got on this podcast, but even before I even started this podcast. But Gina is here. I wanted to bring her on because I think you being a mom of daughters have, really could have a lot of interest in what Gina has to offer. Based on the bio I just read, we're going to be talking about, your desire to have this mother-daughter connection. But we want to put a pause on that. As much as we want our daughters to kind of gravitate towards us, there's some things that we need to do as moms and realize how we can have a really meaningful, deep relationship with our daughter and even if our sons, for those of you who have boys, by first pausing and discovering who you are exactly. I know it's scary to think about, gosh, what am I bringing into this relationship? But I have Gina here to kind of offset some of those scariness or even things that we're trying to avoid in ourselves, or maybe even highlight things that we didn't realize we're avoiding. So Gina, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Jeannie. I know you're such an amazing podcast host and also friend, and I just so appreciate you. So thank you for having me on today, and I'm really excited to dive deep in all things motherhood, particularly with this mother-daughter dynamic and the moms who really deserve much, much more. So yeah, thank you so much.
Of course, this was actually months in the planning, moms. I mean, I've been trying to get Gina on the podcast for a while, but I'm so glad that we're able to do this now. Believe me, I'm super excited to have her on here. Now, okay, I know your heart is mom and mom's hearts, right? And how they see and value themselves. And you're saying that a mom's journey back to herself is not about doing more, right? Not doing more. It's about remembering who they are beneath all these hats that we wear. Wife, mom, daughter. You know, I just had a guest on about being a good daughter with aging parents. Can you explain more about that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's so much when we become a mom that happens. We take on so many more roles and responsibilities in motherhood. And what typically happens is as we start to juggle all of those responsibilities, we begin to lose ourselves and we lose connection to who we were before we were a mom. We get pressured by, let's just say, society or our own expectations sometimes as well. We can lose ourselves in certain demands that we put on ourselves, a way that we think we're supposed to show up, or a way that society has deemed motherhood. And sometimes these aren't even necessarily always conscious choices that we're making. They're just sort of unwritten things that have maybe we've seen in the past that we think a mom is supposed to look like, or how she's supposed to be, or how she's supposed to move through motherhood. And when we put those pressures on ourselves, it's a big weight. It's a big weight to carry, and it gets really loud. And so that can really become the struggle. And this is why I say we don't need to do extra work. We need to go back to what our truths are.
I like that. I think sometimes we unintentionally carry this expectation, like you were saying, what a good, in air quotes, mom should look like, and how we should navigate relationships with people in our family and friendships. And because of those expectations, right, we carry that and we are hard on ourselves, which actually hurts our relationships and how we relate to others when we're doing it for the expectation instead of doing it for the true reasons of why you want to do it, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I and most moms, it's a really beautiful quality, but it's also a detriment of
Mhm.
ours, which is
Yeah,
we show up and we want everybody to be happy, right?
right.
I think every mom can relate with that. We just want that like peace and the cohesiveness. We want our kids to flourish and feel good. And so we feel like if we can do all the things all the time that they can maintain that. And sometimes that's just really underneath the surface even. We don't even realize that that's happening, but we don't want to see them in discomfort or unhappy. And so we tend to want to please, or sometimes this is where that overdoing or can come into play. And then also, dare I say the word self-abandonment, which,
Mhm.
I've been guilty of for many, many years early on in my motherhood journey. We sometimes abandon ourselves accidentally. It's not intentional. It's because we're trying to do the best that and that's what's so amazing about moms is that we're willing to give absolutely everything, no matter what. I mean, shirt off our back, the last food on our plate. If we're exhausted, we'll still push and keep doing that thing for our kid because we wanted to go and play in the snow, or our daughter asked us to go to the mall last minute. Uh, and you're like, sure, I'm exhausted, but I'll do it anyways because it's time with her.
Mm,
So these things happen, and it's okay to do them, but not always. And so learning that pace that feels good to us and what our true capacity looks like, which is why I talked about returning, that return to self is so huge.
yeah. I like how you use that word self-abandonment because I didn't really think about that. It's more self-sacrificial for sure, but self-abandonment, that's a huge word that cuts a little bit deeper when you think about all the things you're willing to do. Like I was saying, this other interview that I was doing, one thing that popped out, she said, not every need is your responsibility. And we feel that every need is our responsibility. When you say self-abandonment, why is it so easy for some moms to do it? And then I have friends that have no problem taking some time for themselves. And there are some moms that don't have a problem with keeping their boundaries. And then there are some moms who feel like self-abandonment is a badge of honor for being a mom. I mean, why is
Mm,
that?
great. That's a great question. Uh, I think it could be two things that show up depending upon the person. It's not just one answer. I would
Yeah.
say that sometimes it was the modeling that we saw also as a child. And generally, I would say it's also a personality aspect too. So sometimes we just come into this world wanting to uh, people please. That's just a natural tendency that we have. And then other times it's really just learned. And so if you have someone, which is why, those you mentioned, your friend that has no problem taking time and is like, no, I can come first, no problem. That's just innately her personality. And there's nothing wrong with that in any way. It's actually a healthy, very good thing.
Yeah.
But I would generally say sometimes the personality can show up, or the learned experience can affect our inability to show up and actually take care of ourselves as well. And that's really
Right.
why we want to check in with ourselves and do the inventory. Happy with, how I feel right now, and with how much I'm giving,
Right.
and where are those patterns coming from, to your point. Sometimes it's a personality aspect.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's an internal work where you self-assess. And then other times it came from experiences that we had or modeling that we had from, let's just say, our own mother or our grandmother, or some female figure that we were close to in our
Hmm.
past. And
Right.
so really understanding where it comes from, because then that's where you can make the change. Because once you make that connection of where is that coming from, and does that feel good to me? That's when you can make an adjustment or a change. That's a great question.
No, it's great. And it's great to what you're saying is just being aware of that tendency and exactly where are you getting it from? Is it something that I myself and innately just have that personality, or was it modeled to me? I think there's a huge difference between the two. I think one models, like, I don't really mind because that's just who I am. And one is I do it out of obligation, which over time can fester some bitterness, right? And guilt about being like having to sacrifice yourself for so long, and is this relationship like real? You know what I mean? Because you're
Mhm.
doing the things to satisfy an expectation that was put upon you, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think, I'm particularly highly sensitive and very much an overgiver. And so generally speaking, those people, if somebody's listening and that resonates, that really is tough in motherhood,
Mhm.
because we really overplease and we really overdo to the detriment of ourself. And I mean, from time and resource, emotionally, mentally, physically, like just the pouring out that can happen. And so it's really, for me, that's been one of my biggest growth areas, I would say, is learning how to self manage my own emotions when I want to give, when even sometimes when my kids don't even need it, right? It's,
Right.
to that point of like, I don't even need to step in right now, but I want to solve or help or fix something. So, uh, really tuning into ourselves and seeing where that's coming from can
Yeah.
be the biggest catalyst for change.
How I guess the question is, how does one notice that? You know what I mean? How does one
Mm,
notice that they're over giving, right?
mm,
Or they're overstepping, what's expected out of them, or even maybe have an over expectation for themselves. I'm just thinking of moms who are listening right now and is probably thinking, well, how do I know if I'm over giving? I'm just being mom, right? And what are some maybe physical or emotional warning signals,
mhm.
working with moms, do you suggest may happen?
Yes. Burnout is one of them. Or, and sometimes I think even for me, I actually didn't think I was burned out. I just thought I was highly productive. you know, really.
Right.
I came into motherhood type A. So, overachiever. I'm an Enneagram, what is it? One
Three.
achiever, right?
I'm
Three.
a
Thank
three
you.
also.
I'm a
Yep.
three. Yes, exactly. This is why I love you, Jeannie. We're threes, right? So we push, and again, that's self-awareness. And that was a great word that you used earlier. We create the awareness around who we naturally are. And I knew that, but it got muddled a bit during motherhood because I could just, it was another area where I could keep pushing and giving. And
Mm.
so there was a time, I guess when I didn't even realize I couldn't slow down. And so, and I thought it almost felt awkward during motherhood to slow down, and like, how could I slow down? And I think that was an inclination. But couple that eventually with burnout, I think so. Asking ourselves, do we feel burned out? Do we feel like we're moving through with at least some grace on some days? Or do we feel as if it feels a bit more frantic
Mm.
and maybe a little out of balance or out of whack? And then I think tuning into some emotions would be the second thing I would look at, because resentment is one of the biggest ramifications, and I would say, of overgiving.
Mm.
There's tons of resentment that comes from that. And that typically comes through in either the relationship or the dynamic where we're overgiving. So if that's with your children, sometimes it can come out in the words that we say when we get triggered. If, let's just say, they're ungrateful for
Yeah.
something that we feel like they should be grateful for, well, the immediate response sometimes can be, well, don't you, why don't you feel grateful for that? Or there's this I don't feel like I'm getting enough. And
Right.
so or that this, when you're tuning in, if you're feeling resentful, and that can also, side note, be transferred, let's say, to a significant other, even if it's happening within the child dynamic. If you're over giving for the children, but within your relationship with your significant other, you end up, let's just say, getting maybe more snippy.
Hmm.
You are very short and you don't feel like they're giving. It's really time to step back, look at, where does this resentment belong? Where has it, why is it showing? And who am I overgiving to?
Right.
And so resentment, I would say, is one of the number one emotions when that comes up to take a deeper look at.
Mm. That's so good. Yeah, because sometimes, and we're just, that's human nature. When we give, sometimes we expect some type of return, whether it just be a sign of gratefulness and appreciation or even acknowledgement, right? Uh, when, okay, so going back to the topic of journey back to herself, um, how can we as moms benefit from really doing a deep dive and understanding who we are so that we can relate better to our teenage daughters?
Mm. The benefits are so immense, and there's so
Mm.
many of them. I'll touch upon a few. When we journey back to ourself, I mean, the first and the most important one, I would say, is that we get so much more regulated.
Mhm.
And I'm specifically talking about just our emotional regulation and our nervous system regulation, which in turn changes how we interact with them completely. It just does.
Right.
When we're feeling kind of amped up because we're feeling not tended to, which generally speaking, and I always say this, like, the moms just give themselves the leftovers all the time, right?
Yes.
It's like the
Yes.
7-day-old lasagna in the back of the
Yeah.
refrigerator. That's what we're willing to give ourselves, right? And it's
Yes.
like we deserve so much more than that. But if you keep giving yourself the leftovers, at some point, it's not going to taste very good.
Right.
So when we do the work to tune back in and start to take care of some of the areas that we're not focused on, the relationships, our communication changes. When our communication changes, the dynamic, the connection with our daughters, and consequently, when we do this, it's really with everyone, the relationships gets better, even with your significant other.
Yeah.
I see this in my work so much. We're just working on the, you know, mother relationship with herself, which in turn trickles down, and the daughter or son, in the case of my work, I work with moms with sons and daughters, changes completely. And then the relationship even with a significant other. So
Mhm.
it really permeates very differently. The other thing I will say is the modeling aspect is absolutely crucial.
Mm.
We're in a time, especially for women and daughters, and this is what we're raising. We're raising young women to show up in the world and take up space, and to not self abandon and not neglect. And so when we
Right.
model tuning into ourself, being able to listen to our own needs, make the time that we truly deserve, even if it's a small amount. When we do that, and especially, and I try to make it a practice to communicate the things that I am doing, even if they don't see it, like let's just say they're at school or they're not around, they're at sports, everybody's really busy. When we sit down that next time, these are things that you want to share what you're doing and why you're doing it, because you need them to know that you're worthy of being taken care of, because what you do, they will also do. And it's more in our modeling than it is in our speaking. Like we can tell them all of the things, but as we know, as parents, kids pick up more of how you show up and the actions that you take rather than what you say. And so if we want
Yep.
independent women who are going to show up and honor themselves when they get to our stage, and in very most instances, most of them are going to have babies also. And so the question that I always ask
Yeah.
myself is, am I modeling the behavior that I want my daughter to model when she's a mom? And that will help me navigate, and does help me navigate, in crucial choices that sometimes can be a little bit more difficult to make.
I like everything that you're saying there about how there is a sense of responsibility of, I talk about breaking chains and breaking generational curses within our family unit, even within the women, right? And how just by tuning back into yourself, being aware of how you're modeling things that are healthy, right, to your daughter, instead of just saying, like, we can talk about how what we want for them, but if we can show them by first modeling what it's like to bring yourself back, knowing how to regulate your emotions so that you can have a good relationship with not just your daughter, but with the people around you, right? It always starts at that person. If you have issues with relationships, always start with you first, because you cannot control what you cannot control, but you can control what you can, which is usually yourself, right? And so I love how your focus on helping moms really bring it back to home, because again, in relationships, it can be very frustrating the way our daughters react in this stage, or even our sons react in this stage, very can be very sassy, lots of attitude. But if we are confident in who we are and how we know and what we do to what arises our emotions, if we can get a hold of that and understand, okay, I know this is triggering for me, right? I will walk away, right? It's that choice, because you know yourself what triggers you. And it's okay to identify those triggers and understand that a little bit better. It's like sometimes moms don't want to open up that can of worms because we're not supposed to be like that, but we're human, right? We come with baggage too, and we won't know, right, what type of baggage has been there. And the great way to test us is through our motherhood, for sure. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. You have
It's
anything to add to that?
it's a perfect way to bring absolutely everything to the surface that you never wanted at the surface. Motherhood. This is exactly true. Yeah, and I think, you were, as you were talking there, the other aspect to add on to that is just even the boundaries of what we will and will not do, and that self-sacrifice and the expectations. There's a lot of societal norms on all the things that we're supposed to be doing. And so even with our daughters, setting certain boundaries gently, consistently, and in a way that feels good to us, sometimes that's even really, really important. And it can be really difficult because we're still trying to, and that's actually an interesting, it's a very interesting struggle that we can experience because we're trying so desperately to have a relationship
Yeah.
at a time when they often don't really want to have a relationship. And so we can sometimes go over boundaries that we don't really want to. And so that's one other area, is just really tuning into what the boundaries are that feel good. And when we model by going back into ourselves and checking in to make the choices that feel good to us, they will in turn learn through our communication. Hey, mom doesn't necessarily, this is a boundary that she has and she's willing to hold it. And she'll honor you for that. Maybe not in that moment, but it'll register. And then in the future, she'll know that it's okay when she holds a boundary.
Right. In a sense, when you cross your boundary, that is your overgiving. You're overgiving. You're giving beyond what you told yourself you would do. And yes, you probably will get some pushback. You probably feel the little poke at you because you're setting your boundary with your daughter. But yeah, I agree with you. Over time, they'll be grateful for knowing what it means to have a hard line and say no. I mean,
Hmm.
it as they grow older, they're going to come into relationships where they're going to have to do the same.
Yes. And I think what comes to me as we talk about that, and just an additional tool for moms as they're listening, sometimes we forget that we can actually explain what's going on in that situation too. Like, I need to set this boundary, or I need to say no to this because I don't want to feel resentful later, or I would have to switch my entire schedule around. And if I do that, like, walk them through gently and calmly the scenario. When you can do that, you'll feel better about it rather than just saying, well, no, I just can't. And I can't agree to that. Or, we're done. And I don't, and then it sort of just kind of escalates. If you
Yes.
can really ground in that moment and walk them through why you're making that choice at that time and why it's important, why it's filling a need of your own, or why you're avoiding something that won't feel good to you later, they're going to see you honoring yourself. And I think that's sort of the second step that I would recommend, is not only holding the boundary, but gently walk them through why. And if you're in, let's just say, a heightened moment, I will say this does happen when they're sometimes asking for a lot of extra, or you're busy moving through something quickly and you can't answer. Pause on and just say, I'm going to say no to you right now, but I'm going to explain to you a little bit later, or, in 2 hours when you get home, let's chat. I want to revisit this and explain to you why I'm saying no, but I can't go through it right now with you. And sometimes
Yeah.
it's helpful to do that in an instance where you're not, you want to say it intuitively, you're like, this is for sure a no, no
Yeah.
matter what it is, whether it's something they're asking for or to do, or it's something that they need you for. uh Very, very important to sometimes take that break so you can formulate your thoughts and revisit it with them later, so that your delivery is smooth and in alignment with what feels good to you. I think that's one key that's really helped, both me and my clients as we've worked through some of these situations.
I also agree with that too. Or even just saying, hey, I need to think about the answer before I give you one, you know,
Hmm.
so that we're not in that reactive mode, but really clearly thinking of how to say it.
Yes.
And most times it's the no is because you know that they're capable of doing it themselves. So it's more like, hey, I can empower you. Like my reason is I can do it, but I know you can do it better. And I know you're capable of doing it. Right. And that saves
Mhm.
both of us time. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think of my daughter too. I just think of her when she asks me to do things. And I'm like, no, you're capable of doing that. Let me know how it goes. Yeah.
Giving her the confidence of it.
Right, and putting it back on the person, right? And
Yes.
that's a lot of things that daughters can assume. I think about relationships with their friendships, they can assume responsibility for somebody else's actions or emotions, and it's like, no, you put it back on them. It's not yours to
Right.
carry, right?
Yes.
So, yes, and that's how you can go back to you and knowing that that is something that I'm not going to take on, for myself. So, okay. Well, as we're wrapping up, can you talk to me about your framework? I know you have a framework for moms as you're working with them.
Yes.
You have written
Yeah.
something. Can you talk about it
Hmm.
just a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Within the framework, when I work with moms, the biggest aspect that I want them to walk away with is their ability to return to themselves. And so as I work with them, there's a journey and a process, and my framework specifically works within that returning thought process, right? So we want to remember who we were originally as a mom before motherhood. And there's a process that I take moms through to kind of tap into the what I like to call their inner genius. So this is aspects of who they innately are, what they need, their desires, and uh, they it's one of those things where when we go through this process to return to themselves, everything else shifts. And
Hmm.
so, um, before motherhood, when we ask that question of like, who were you? A lot of emotion actually comes up uh, because they realize then there's so much more than just the motherhood had, and that the mom motherhood had is so important and so vital. And so, learning to take that first step and really assess is really where we start. And uh, the return aspect is really return, embrace. We want to trust, we entangle, we reclaim, and then we nourish. And so each of those specific letters, I take a mom through a very specific process so that we can assess what's going on underneath the surface so that when she goes through the entire journey, on the other side, she's not only more connected to herself, she's more connected to her children.
Mm.
And so that looks like emotional regulation. That looks like evaluating, what's coming up and why that's coming up. And then we also have tools to apply to those things quickly and effectively to snip those in the bud and also to transition how we're thinking. And we want to build trust with ourselves. So we want to talk about our intuition and how we show up and tune into that so that we can model that behavior for our daughters.
Right.
If we're not looking at what's going on in our inner world and modeling that we do know, like we want to teach them that they know best for themselves. And so we need to be deeply connected in ourself is like the one of the biggest things and the greatest gifts that we can give our daughters. And we want to untangle from things like guilt and shame, overwhelm. The tougher emotions, particularly resentment, comes up a lot as well. Untangling from those is absolutely paramount. And that's a process in itself because often we've sort of covered it over. I like to call it like almost like we've, covered it over with the dirt over and over again, and
Yeah.
more keeps piling on. And so it gets kind of heavy. And so we clear all that off. And I like the mom to be sort of clean and clear with the emotional aspects that she's experiencing. And we want to reclaim our voice and our boundaries. And that's a self assessment that we have to go through and really look at like what's happening here. Why can't I speak up, or why can't I take that time for myself? What's happening, and like within my schedule and within my life, and how do I make that time for me,
Right.
and also how do I feel good about it, because those are two very different things. There's one thing to take it, and then it's also another to feel really good about it when you take it versus, oh, I feel like I shouldn't be taking this time right now, I feel guilty, or it just there's a lot of moms that I've worked with where they literally, and this is serious, like after 5 or 10 minutes of like sitting down to read a magazine, feel immense guilt. And so really working through some of that, because it's very counterintuitive when we can't give ourselves that time, even that 5 or the 10 minutes. We If we struggle through that time that we gave ourselves, we weren't really in joy when we were sitting in that time. And so I really want my moms to be in joy when they're trying to enjoy themselves versus thinking about all the things that they're supposed to be doing or having so much guilt while they're doing it. And so there's work surrounding that. And then really just nourishing themselves and their relationships,
Mm.
specifically the mother daughter and the daughter son relationship, because that's how we know we feel amazing at the end of the day.
Right.
When we, close our eyes, we feel like, you know what, I had a successful day. Why was it successful? Because I felt amazing when I moved through it. I gave to the people that I needed to, but I also gave to myself.
Mm. I love this work that you're doing and really focusing on the woman, specifically in motherhood. And just, yeah, you're right. How I love the word untangling these emotions, specifically the negative emotions that are tied to us and what we think we should be doing. And I can totally relate to that mom, especially when the kids were younger, just sitting 5 minutes and being feeling guilty because I'm sitting down to rest for myself. It's I think amazing work to be able to I say the word pry because it is prying the mom away from these expectations that are so high that not I don't know any mom that can like really have those expectations and feel good about themselves at the same time, right?
Mhm.
And to be focusing on the mom and being okay to be where they're at, being okay with who they are so that they can relate to the people in their circles, right? It's giving who you truly are, not who they expect you to be or who you expect yourself to be as a mom. So I love all that work that you're doing. I love this framework that you are providing for moms and helping them work through that. I know it's for some, it's not as easy as just 10 steps or whatever, how many steps. It's like a lifelong journey to be able to
Mhm.
let go of things and be okay to put yourself first, which even sounds bad just saying it, right?
I know we both, you can't help it. You're always going to cringe maybe just a little bit, but if you can just take the actions that
Right.
help you to put yourself first, it's a practice. It's not easy, but it is a practice. And when you do it, and you do it intentionally and you do it well, in whatever quantity that you can manage based on your schedule, it's life and relationship and family, uh, transforming. Like it will literally change absolutely everything when the mom tunes back into herself.
Mm.
I've seen it time and time again. And it's why I'm so, like, I just working with moms. It's like one of my favorite things to do is support them because, like I said earlier, they give themselves first. And if I try to give gentle edge, um, they will they won't do it for themselves. So
Yeah.
here I am, ready to
Yeah.
serve them.
Yeah. And it's not a lonely place to know that you're not the only one going through it, you know. I
Yes. Oh yeah.
before you leave and share your information, can you give the moms that are listening right now one tactical step right after, you know, not listening to this episode that they can do to actually turn back towards themselves? Like what's one tactical step?
Yes. Oh, I love this. This is a great question. I'm going to give you the tool that I would like to share with the moms is the evidence, what I like to call the evidence practice. And moms are really hard on themselves,
Mhm.
and this can be really transformative for how you feel about how you're doing in parenting, because so often I hear moms sit down with me, often in tears or just highly emotional or sometimes frustrated that they feel like they're failing. That comes up a lot. And so this is a tool that can be the antidote for that, or at least illuminate an initial shift for them. And so what I like to say is to uh, grab any type of journal or notebook. And for 1 week, every single night, you're going to write down 3 things that you did well for your family that day, like success stories. And I want you to write down the emotions that you experienced, whether, and these don't have to be huge things that you've done. It could just be that, an interaction between that you were successful with your uh, daughter or son that went well, that maybe you weren't triggered. It could be something like a look or a thank you that they gave you that they wouldn't normally. It could be that you took the 5 minutes for yourself and how you felt replenished. And so I want you to do that every single night, at least 3 things. But when you sit down for bedtime and you write those out, write the emotions, anchor into those. And when you go to start this practice at the beginning of the week, I want you to write down the things that you think about yourself as a mom,
Mm.
what you tell yourself all the time about how you're doing, how you feel like you're doing. Then you do this exercise for the 7 days. And then at the end of the 7 days, and I would say at least seven, do a check in at 7. After that seventh night, I want you to write down how you feel like you're doing now.
Mm.
And I want you to compare the emotions that you're feeling between that time frame. And generally speaking, I would say 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 times, the emotion and how you view yourself changes greatly, which translates to a different mom showing up.
Yeah, better responses. Yeah, I love that exercise. So, mamas listening, I would grab your journal, write your three things that you've done over the week, right, to help.
Nightly, yes. What you can celebrate about yourself, what you did
Yes,
well. Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
and to reflect.
Hmm.
I love
Yeah,
that.
because you're doing an amazing job and you're just not giving yourself credit for it.
True, because we are bombarded by probably things that we lack, and we tend to focus on that. So, Mama, let's not
But
focus on that. Let's focus on the things that you
yes,
are doing well, because
yes,
I know you are. Well, Gina, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your passion for moms. Where can they
yes.
find you?
They can find me one of two places. They can go to my website, which is Journey with G, and the with and then G stands for my first name. So journeywithg.com, or my Instagram is Gina, Genia .enders, Enders. And those are the two places you can find me.
Awesome. And if you didn't get that, don't worry. You can go back to the show notes and I'll have the links connected there so you can find Gina and ask all your questions. Thanks, Gina, for coming on. I
It's
loved
been
having
my
you on here.
pleasure. Thank you so much, Jeannie. And it's so good to see you. And I love seeing you on camera and being part of the amazing podcast. So appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much. Hey, friend, if this podcast inspired you or encouraged you or helped you in any way, I'd love for you to share it. You can screenshot this episode and share it in your stories on social media or text it to a friend who can use the support. It's the best way you can thank me. I want to let other mamas know they are not alone. I'd love to stay connected with you. You can find me at raisingherconfidently.com. Until next time, live full of grace, Jeannie.